G'day and thanks for joining us for another Australia Talks. I'm DK and I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host Ardeet. Today is Thursday, the 16th of July 2026, and our topics this week are Australian coffee industry is up for expansion. That's right, we have a coffee industry and we're going to talk about it. And workers being paid less than productivity gains. This isn't too much of a surprise, but we have the numbers and we will go into it. Of course, we've got our Tutix Town Talk, and then we'll jump into This Week in Australian History and finish off, as always, with the Forex Bottle Top Trivia. But before we get into all of that, we need a favour from all of you. If you enjoy the show, the best thing you can do to help us out is share it with a friend. We'd be grateful for a review if you feel so generous as well. It helps grow the podcast and helps us keep making the show that you love. Now, let's catch up with the last week. Ardeet, hello. How's your week been going?
Hello, DK. It's been going pretty smoothly. Finally getting some cabinets in the garage, which is something that's been on the books for a while. So, and with the trip that we were going to go on to Scotland getting cancelled, we thought, we'll use some of that money for the cabinets. So yeah, that's been that should hopefully tidy up the garage a bit more, make the shelves a little less open and a little bit more inside. But it was because whenever I have a tradie here or tradies, I do like to go out and have a sticky beak at what they're doing. One, because it's good to keep an eye on them and to let them know that you're sort of watching what they're doing as well. But two, because you get to learn stuff, and that's sort of my biggest motivation. And it was interesting because he had to put the kickers, which is the base for the cabinets, along the wall, and it was a laser, but like a green laser unit that was probably about the size of a Fat Max Stanley measuring tape, one of those tapes that you pull out. So it was roughly like that. Just had it sitting there. So it was sending a line all the way along. And as he said, once you get over a certain length, it's really tricky to get a level across all that. So he just has the laser sitting there, has a bit of wood with his mark on, and just moves along, packing the kickers until the line's on the right spot. So he knows when he gets to the end, everything's going to be level. And they did finish it today. They've got to come back for the handles tomorrow. But you look at it and you think, God, that's just... Look, because when something's not right, your eye jumps onto it straight away.
Yep.
And it's interesting seeing this stuff. Oh, that's what's going underneath, and all that little bit's propped up a bit. That one's down a bit. I like seeing that. So yeah, that'll be good. And the next job is putting everything back into the cabinets and documenting them. But it'll be nice to have it. Nice to have it done. So yeah, that was good getting that sorted and looking after that. And then between now and next week's podcast, got a colonoscopy on Tuesday. So in a day or two, I'll be starting on the diet change, and then have the day of the the purging, having all the stuff in there in preparation for it. But that's good. It's a bit uncomfortable, but it's a bit uncomfortable. I hate running the loo the whole time, but in terms of the benefits you get from it, and getting in there and checking things out, and getting rid of any little things that might be growing, totally worth it. And really, it's quite easy. And you're conked out for all of it. So yeah, that's sort of on my mind for the next few days as well. So I'll fill in you and mates of the podcast on how that goes, and I can almost predict it's going to be totally uneventful, as it usually is. But that's a good peace of mind.
Of course. A bit of a shitty time, as they say.
Well, yeah, exactly, quite literally. So, but yeah, that's the reality of it. What about you? What have you been up to?
I want to plug, and actually our listeners from Japan, friends of the show in Japan, will know how good a nice pair of nail clippers. I don't know why, but the Japanese just make the best ones, and I recently got some, and I just wanted to tell everyone, if you've never used a really good quality pair of nail clippers, which I know you're like, what does it matter? DK, come on. You're just trimming your nails.
Oh, bloody oath it matters.
It does make quite a big difference. And for not a lot of money. So I bought a pair of Green Bell Japanese-made.
So what do you call it? Green Bell?
Green Bell was the brand I purchased from. I bought it from Amazon.
Yeah.
And they're stainless steel. They were about 26 Australian dollars, so they weren't particularly expensive. I mean, compared to the ones you can get for just a couple of bucks, sure. But as far as a nice product goes, absolutely fantastic. Never thought I would be recommending nail clippers to anyone, but I can tell you now, it is one of those things that just. It's now quite a pleasure to use.
I can understand. I can understand that. And what particularly appealed to you?
I think it's the ease of which it seems to cut the nail, and I think the difference is a lot of cheaper nail clippers kind of shear the nail. They don't actually cut it, whereas these do. So they are precision machines. They line up. They're actually sharp blades, and they have a little catch thing, so it catches all the nails, so they don't go flying off in every direction. So then you can just tip them out.
I'm just looking them up now.
And I'll tell you what, I'm very, very impressed.
That's very schmick.
And they feel good in the hand and all of those things. So this is one of these things where if you have a nice pair of nail clippers, you're probably smiling and agreeing, going, yes, they are worth. Again, I cannot stress this enough. It's not a lot of money. Look, I understand that some people can't afford at $26 to buy a pair of nail clippers, but I do think a lot of Aussies probably can spare a little bit of money. It would make actually quite a good present, I think, particularly for someone that's older.
Completely agree with you. Yeah, I'm not sort of bunging it on as soon as you say, because I used to have those. Like the nail clippers, we sort of, a number of us grew up with those little things that are about, what's that going to be, about 5 centimeters in length, just the typical ones, and you'd sort of get in, you'd get this rough finish, and because of how they were, sometimes you wouldn't get a proper cut in there, or you'd cut too low or that. But and obviously you can't, Japan with cutting edge.
Yes,
I mean, really,
they do it like no one else.
They got a lot. They got a lot of runs on the board. But I'm just looking at this, and I can see that just the way that's formed. And sorry, I distracted myself because I got this big. And I remember when I got a bigger pair of, like, a decent one that was a bigger pair, I thought, this is so much better. But I'm looking at that, and that looks like a step up.
They are very, very good. What I'll do, because I'm sure there's someone going to go, can you send me the link? What I'll do is I'll put it at the bottom of the show notes, the last link. We'll put it in there, the Amazon link.
Yep.
So you can, if you want to, you can see what I'm talking about. They do have an emery board on them as well, which is quite nice on the handle.
Are you happy for us just to put the website of Green Bell?
Sure. Well, yeah, we can do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, because we don't have any affiliate thing or anything set up, so we may as well send it straight to the actual.
Yep, let's do that.
If that suits you. Sorry, I jumped in on there.
No. That's probably a better idea rather than sending you all to Amazon. I did buy it from Amazon. I have no complaints with that. But if you don't want to go through Amazon and you want to support them directly, go straight to their website. Can recommend it. I was very, very impressed. And you're an adult when you get excited about these little.
God, you're right. Didn't even think of that.
But if you're,
that's funny.
If you want to present nicely. Seriously, you got to trim your nails, and this is a fantastic way to do it. I'm a big fan of things like this, which is like it's a nice object. You're happy to use it. I have a similar thing with a razor, a straight razor for shaving, obviously. But I use like a safety razor, like the old school one where you put the razor blade in it and everything like that. And it is amazing. And I wish that I had got it years and years before. I spent a lot of money on all these fancy multi-blade razors and all of that kind of crap. And I just went back to the style that men had been using for 100 years, 150 years. And it's fantastic. It's very, very cheap. Costs me hardly anything.
So the old one where you screw in the razor blade on.
Yep. Best razor I've ever had. So I did get a nice one, a nice handle.
Yeah.
It's made out of like anodized aluminium and stainless steel, and it is very nice. It feels very good in the hand. It wasn't a particularly expensive, like package altogether, and it's certainly I've had it now for probably 3 or 4 years, and the blades for like 200 blades I think cost me like $20, and I've still got probably 150 left. Like,
wow.
I do have a beard, but I still shave almost every day as well. Shave my cheeks and my neck and things like that. So, this is, again, in my mind, this is a similar sort of thing where for a little bit of money, a little bit of investment, you get a nice quality product that's going to last you a long time and probably actually in the long term save you quite a lot of money. So, because everyone knows the blades are expensive and they dull really quickly, and in my opinion, they're basically a scam. So just go back to the old safety razor.
Oh, that's interesting. You went to the safety razor.
Yeah.
As you know, too, I've got a beard as well. I wouldn't say I'm a regular shaver, but when I do the back of my neck and the shower or under my neck and on the cheeks, I've used like a cutthroat razor for. God, I've had it for has to be 20 years. The same razor, and I used it when I didn't have a beard and would shave. You have to sort of keep it sharp, obviously, but it works well. So I know. That's why I was interested to hear that you'd gone back to that safety razor setup and that you were getting good results from it.
Yeah, the one I have is genuinely fantastic. It's I had a really cheap one to give it a go, and that worked really, really well as well. So then I decided I would get a bit nicer one that's sort of a bit nicer quality that will probably last a lot longer. And again, it has. So if you're looking for a nail clipper, go and check the show notes. And if you want a razor, give a safety razor a go, even a cheap one. You can find them around. I think people are coming back to that sort of style because they've realized that the old ones are just they're expensive. And you don't
those multi-blade super duper. We've got the slip and slide all over them. They're insanely expensive.
They are. They're very expensive for what they are.
In fact, that was part of the reason I went to the straight blade. I thought I'll give it a go, and I was reasonably comfortable having to sharpen it. I thought, God, I got to the point where I was thinking, like even back, 15 years, 20 years ago, thinking, how much am I paying for one of these packs of 5 blades? It was, like $20 or something, and it's even more now.
Yeah.
Huh.
No, it is. That's one of those things that I think a lot of people realize that it is a bit of a scam, and even the cheap disposable ones aren't really that cheap once you start adding it all up. So
no.
I don't have a specific recommendation there. Just go and I would say get a cheap one and see how you go. And if you like it, then maybe look, because some of them can get quite pricey, like into the hundreds of dollars. So, give it a go, see if it works for you. And if it does, maybe move on from there.
Yeah. Good tips.
All right, speaking of tips, increased demand and new varieties are set Australian coffee industry up for expansion. Australians are among the world's biggest coffee drinkers. If you've ever been here, you would absolutely know we are massive, probably the biggest coffee snobs in the world, I reckon. But less than 1%. I just heard every Italian cry out in anger. I think we give those guys a run for our money.
They seem to be catching up in Italy.
They are very big coffee snobs, but I don't know if you come down under. I'll tell you what, if I've offended any Italians, we'll swap. You can come here, I'll go there. We can agree to disagree. Australians are among the world's biggest coffee drinkers, but less than 1% of the coffee consumed in Australia is grown locally. Many people don't think of Australia as a coffee growing country at all, probably because coffee cultivation is typically associated with tropical high altitude areas. But that doesn't mean that we can't produce a good cup of coffee here. In fact, coffee has been successfully grown in Australia on the East Coast for more than 100 years. As harvest gets underway in the Atherton Tablelands in far north Queensland, researchers and growers believe there is significant room for domestic coffee industry to grow. Rising consumer demand, improved production methods, and trials of new coffee varieties are fueling optimism Australia could produce a greater share of its own beans. Southern Cross University Professor for Plant Breeding and Genetics, Tobias Kritzmar, has spent years trialling different coffee varieties to identify those best suited to Australian conditions. He says, quote, "We're never going to be mainstream, so we can't ever meet the total demand for Australian coffee, even if we ramped up with maximum potential. What we're looking for is a sustainable intersection. I expect that we can expand quite massively with the shift in consumer preferences, but also because we are starting to get competitive in terms of pricing." End quote. Professor Kretschmar's research has identified 4 promising varieties of coffee, which growers are now beginning to scale up production on commercial farms. While Australia's coffee industry has been concentrated in far north Queensland and northern New South Wales, Professor Kretschmar said new regions were showing potential. He says, quote, "We're now going to test whether or not we can grow coffee in Western Australia, but also expand production areas in the existing established regions. That would allow coffee to become a bigger production in the Australian coffee industry and market." End quote. He also said that interest was growing among producers looking to diversify, particularly avocado growers. He explained, quote, "One of the key drivers we're realizing is there's been an overproduction of avocados in Australia. There's too many avocado farms and they're looking to diversify. Traditionally, if you can grow avocado, it's pretty much the right climate and soil to be growing coffee as well. So that is worth trialing." End quote. And I agree. I reckon if your crop of avocados is, maybe not getting quite the income you want, maybe having a bit of coffee on the side isn't a bad idea. Professor Kritzmar said macadamia growers were also exploring coffee as an alternative crop. So more Aussies are chasing Aussie-grown coffee, and who knows, maybe at some point we can be even as bold to go as a coffee exporter. But Ardeet, have you ever tried Aussie coffees, varieties?
I have tried Aussie coffee. I had mixed experiences, but it was predominantly positive. Not something that I particularly seek out, but if I do see it on offer, I'll definitely give it a go. And look, to me, this is another story of potential growth industry for Australia, and very, very positive. And look, I suppose I'm not so expert as to be able to, to say all the nuances, the different beans. I know there's a Arabica bean, and then there's the I always forget the other main one, as well as those all subsets of bean. But I like when it's roasted and darker. I'm not too keen on the like the berryish or mocha styles to the coffee, and I think I found that a couple of the Aussie ones I had were a bit more to the berry side, which wasn't to my tasting. But one that I did like, and I can't even remember what the name was, it did have a darker roast, and it brought out more that real sort of deep coffee flavour that I love. Because I've always liked coffee. Used to drink way too much. But now I'm not too bad. Now I'm not too bad. I cut down a hell of a lot. So I probably have I don't know what, 4 coffees a day. A couple of them are double shots, the other a shot and a half, but at least half of them will be decaf. Sometimes it might only be 3, but yeah, and that was sort of a cut down. But I do really love that coffee flavour. Now, flat white's my go-to, but I also like a long macchiato, particularly after a meal when I'm feeling a bit full. And there's a few like the coffee industry in Australia, as you alluded to, it was an early experiment in the 1830s to 1870s, and then they did try and cultivate it and commercialise it in the late 1880s and early 1920s. Didn't really take off, probably for most of the like 1930s, 1980s, it was pretty much a non-event as an industry in Australia. But since the 1980s, 1990s, it's taken off a lot more, and part of that is just is she throwing science at it, getting these things sorted out. People do forget just how technical a lot of farmers need to be. It's not just a case of just throw it in the ground and she'll be right. There is analysis of soil types, light, water, chemicals that go in. There's just so much that goes into farming that's actually going to be profitable, that oftentimes you need a real boost of science, like that. I can't remember the name. He said Professor Tobias, somebody or other. That he's essentially, what's growing to grow here? What are we looking for here? Let's try a variation of this and that, and then patience and waiting and analysis. It's all there's a lot of this that's very technical, and then when the technical stuff's done and it's passed on to the farmer, they're still having to ensure that it's complying with that science in order to get the best yield, because obviously they want to get the maximum value out of their land and maximum value for their crop. So yeah, I'm not surprised to sort of hear that as we sort of got a bit more advanced on that science, that it started to become more of a thing for Australia. Plus, we had the real growth of the coffee culture in Australia. So you actually had a local market. If you'd had to, say, try and compete with coffee over in Italy, you would have had a pretty uphill battle. But because you've got so many people here actually interested in drinking coffee, if you can get the economics right, it's potentially a lot of room to grow. I've got what it was got here, a quote from that article. Mr. Murat said Mr. Murat, I think was a farmer, said that less than 0.5% of the coffee consumed in Australia was produced, grown and roasted domestically. So that's a lot of space to grow, and it's a huge market, and that's the key point for me. It's a market that has proven demand, and our coffee growers just need to be a bit better in the competition and take advantage of potentially cheaper transport costs, because we're already here in the land where it's being delivered. So, yeah, look, it's you and I often get the big kebs about these industries, and this is another one. I love seeing this, and I do like drinking it. So, yeah, that's good. How about you? Have you had much in the way of Australian coffee, and how much coffee do you go through, and what's your opinion on this industry developing?
In my house, we drink a fair bit of coffee. Probably not as much as you, but we get it from a local roastery, but it's like imported coffee. I don't know if I've ever had Australian coffee. I may have had it because I've had a lot of specialty coffees. I may have had it and not realised it was Australian coffee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But as far as I know, I can't point to an event and go, oh yeah, we had Aussie coffee there, which is a shame. I feel like, and one of our past topics, we were talking about Australian coffee, and I did look to see if I could get any locally, and unfortunately I can't, and I would have to get it, and it was quite expensive, and I was sort of like, do I want to take a risk on something that I'm not really sure if I'm going to like? I sort of prefer to buy a smaller bag and try it, before I commit to a big bag, but it's definitely something that I would be inclined to give a real go if I could get it locally or in a local shop or something like that, because I do feel like coffee is one of these ones where there are new varieties. They are constantly experimenting and sort of crossbreeding and all of that kind of stuff, that there's always innovations in the agricultural space, and it's incredible the work that is being done. And I think in my mind, Australia should grow a lot more coffee. I understand that, the conditions aren't perfect for it and so on and so forth, but it kind of surprises me that our coffee industry has always kind of lagged behind other parts of the world, just because we are such a big coffee nation, and we are such a coffee snob. I'm kind of a purist too. I drink black coffee. I don't put anything in my coffee. It's just
okay, yeah,
just bean water for me. I don't even put sugar or anything in it. So I am quite sensitive, I guess, to the taste of just the beans. So if it's not a quality product, there's nowhere to hide with how I consume it. It is it's got to be good, otherwise you can't hide it behind the milk or the sugar or any other additives or anything like that. So we always buy really quality beans. We do spend quite a lot of money on the beans, but I think it's worth it for a good cup of coffee.
If you're going to have a cup of coffee and you're not going to have a lot, if you're just chugging like water, fair enough.
Yep.
But if you're going to have a cup of coffee, it's so worth it having a good one.
100%. And I feel like the price difference really isn't that high. We've bought beans that are sort of, for a half kilo bag of beans, you're looking at maybe for cheap stuff, maybe between $15 and $20. I'm talking like drinkable stuff, not complete garbage water. But for a really high quality bean, you might pay like $20 to $25 for half a kilo or something along those sort of lines, or maybe slightly more. So I do think there's a lot of people like me that are. I wouldn't say I'm like a coffee enthusiast. I don't go crazy to the level I know some people do with their coffee. And
haven't got the thermometer out there ensuring that it's got to 83.5 degrees Celsius.
Nah, I just trust that my machine does it, and it makes it how I like it, and it's fine. But I know there are a lot of people that are like that, and so I guess in my mind, those are the people I would probably target if I was a farmer, is try and go to the real high end, because those people do spend a hell of a lot of money on their coffee. They are perfectionists. And if you can satisfy those people, I think you can definitely satisfy like 99% of the Australian public. And the price is the key thing here. If we can get that price to a pretty close comparison to what imported coffee can, and look, I understand it is difficult to try and price match something from a country where you're only paying people a couple of dollars a day to harvest it, and so on and so forth. So in that frame of mind, it is going to be difficult to be competitive. But like you said, we are dealing with a local product that is being consumed locally, so some of those transport costs are lower and so on and so forth. But again, people will pay a premium for those Aussie produce as well. So look, I'm really excited about this. I think it's really, really good. I'd love to see more of it, and I will keep an eye out for Australian coffee in the future to see if I can get some. And I may even ask the local roastery if he can get some for me. They may have connections and things like that. So yeah, I think this is cool. I'd love to. Yeah. I'd love to have a coffee plant and sort of give it a go myself, but I'm not really sure how the climate here. I'm probably a little bit too far south for the coffee beans, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have a look.
No,
and see.
yeah. Well, look, I mean, that could be interesting. You know, one of the things that sometimes come out of these research is that they develop something for the domestic market for somebody who just thinks, oh, wouldn't that be groovy to have a coffee bean tree?
Yeah, and maybe,
I'm not sure how big they even get, but I remember seeing that in that article. Just had that picture of someone doing the mechanized harvesting of it. So that's a cost reduction as well. But oftentimes there's things like that. If you can just get it in, get it from the nursery or something, it could be interesting for somebody to do at home.
Absolutely, and that would be cool. I would give that a go, I think. And yeah, look, I probably screw it up when I come to roasting it, but it's all part of the fun of it.
Exactly. It's still get a buzz out of that. And one thing that just before we move on, one thing that I noticed when I saw the coffee plant, have you got the article up there or anything where it shows the picture of that coffee plant with him looking at the beans on the trees?
Yep.
Yeah. What plant does that remind you of with those leaves?
Kind of like holly or something like that. It looks very Christmassy, doesn't it?
Does it remind you of macadamia?
A little bit, yes.
Yes, that was the first thing I thought when I saw that. I thought, oh, that looks like a macadamia tree. Now, that's probably apropos of nothing, but I thought, oh, that was interesting that I wonder if there is some relationship there or whether that means anything or whether it's just pure coincidence. But yeah, I was just curious whether you could see that as well.
Yeah, no, they definitely do look similar and they do grow in similar climates. So that may be just the link there, that it's kind of like, a similar shrub with a berry that grows in a similar climate. Yeah. And so that's kind of an optimal way to grow. But it could be that they are distantly related or something like that, because macadamia nuts are local to Queensland. And so I wonder if there is, a distant relation to coffee, which I'm trying to think where coffee comes from. I think it's like North Africa or something like that. So, or the Arabian Peninsula or somewhere in that region. So I guess it's probably a bit far, but who knows? Like there may be some relation there. They definitely look quite similar. All right, let's move on. It's time now for our Two Ticks Town Talk.
I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert, square, man. I breathe the mountain air, man.
All right, this week's Two Ticks Town Talk, we're going west, all the way west. Actually, as far as you can go west on the Australian mainland. We're going back to the region of Shark Bay, specifically to the southern region of Shark Bay. And we're going to go to a town that I'm going to tell you straight up, you're not allowed to go here. Like, if you are listening to this and go, oh, wow, I'd really like to go. You can't. I'm sorry. It is a closed town. But it is called, and I'll come back to that in a minute, why it's a closed town. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself.
Good. Yeah, I thought it was a forward sizzle.
Yeah, I'm powering through. But we're going to go to the town of Useless Loop, Western Australia, which... Okay, the elephant in the room is, what the hell is that name? Useless Loop is absolutely a strange name. And previously we've covered a couple of towns in this area because the Shark Bay region is so fascinating and it has so much going for it. Through the research for some of those other areas in the past, Useless Loop obviously stands out because it has a really, really strange name. But the town itself isn't particularly interesting. So I've kind of skipped over it. And it's also quite small. So I sort of thought, there's probably not too much there that we can go into. But there is actually a couple of things that do make it really interesting around it, which I will get into in a minute. But let's start with the name, because I feel like you got to explain what the hell this name is. So it all starts with a French captain, Nicholas Thomas Bolden, born in 1750, just a couple of weeks ago, and he became a well-known navigator and naturalist. And quite famously, he led an expedition approved by Napoleon Bonaparte himself to Western Australia in 1800. He was attempting to complete a voyage of discovery that would further scientific knowledge and perhaps even eclipse the achievements of Captain James Cook, who famously had he was killed in Hawaii, but his voyage had returned not long before Captain Nicholas Baldwin decided to set off into his journey. Side note, Captain Bolden is also quite famous on the podcast for his meeting of Matthew Flinders on the 8th of April, 1802 in Encounter Bay in South Australia, which I think we've mentioned every early April as it comes up on This Week in Australian History. But so he's the other guy that met Matthew Flinders, which certainly would have been a bit awkward because
a bit awkward.
Britain and France were at war at the time. A peace treaty had been signed literally like a couple of weeks before their encounter, so it certainly would have been quite awkward, that initial encounter. But thankfully, both parties were aware of the treaty that had been signed, so there was no hostility between them. But it certainly would have been an interesting experience. I would have liked to be a fly on the wall for that meeting. But anyway. Henry Louis Frichet was an explorer on the Baldwin expedition, and he complained that in Shark Bay there was what appeared to be a really good natural harbour, but a sandbar had stopped him and his ships from entering into that natural harbour, and he named the place Havre in. I'm going to butcher this because I don't speak French, but Havre in Tualal, which means useless harbour, which, and I should say, to his credit, he's not just a whinging Frenchman. There are quite a lot of natural sandbars in the area of where he would have been trying to navigate into. And so his complaint, isn't entirely him just being dramatic, as often the French are, but the name stuck because, of course, he was the first known European to name a thing on a nautical chart, and as we know from the past, those nautical charts get copied and copied and so on and so forth, and the name has stuck. And so useless loop is what it's ended up being translated as, and useless inlet is right nearby. And basically, ever since, it's been known for being useless. But it has found its modern use. Today, Useless Loop is a company town. The company is the Solar Salt Operation Shark Bay, and it's owned by Mitsu, a Japanese company who has owned it since 1973. And the company, the town is a company town, and it is closed to the public because it is private property, essentially. It does.
Oh, right. Okay.
It does have about 165 permanent residents who are mostly employees and their families. Well, they are pretty much exclusively employees and their families of the solar salt operation. Though some of them are sort of, groundskeepers and government workers and associated, but they're all part of the salt operation that is there. And this all began back in the 1960s when the Shark Bay salt field was first established, because the seawater in Shark Bay is about 1.5 times saltier than the open ocean. And this high concentration of salt means that it's much, much easier to harvest than just pumping out regular salt water and waiting for it to evaporate. Of course, Shark Bay's hot, dry climate is ideal for solar salt mining, and the lack of pollution in the area The geology and the biology in Shark Bay means that the salt that's produced there is 99.7% pure. The secret sauce here is that the natural seagrass that grows in Shark Bay, it helps clean the water, and it actually retains the water within the bay, allowing it to flow into the bay and then holding it there. So the transfer of water out of the bay is significantly delayed. And as such, a lot of the water in the bay does evaporate, and thus increases the natural.
Right.
Yeah, it increases the natural salinity of the water, which is then pumped into the mining area. Today, the farm encompasses 70 square kilometers of operational salt ponds, which is absolutely massive. The salt field was built by enclosing natural islets. Seawater is then pumped into the first evaporation pond from the useless inlet area, which contains about 64 square kilometers of operation ponds, or evaporators as they're called. And this is, there's a whole, without getting into too much detail, basically they use the tides as like an aid and pumps and a whole heap of things. There's quite a lot that goes into it, rather than just sort of, we just throw some water in this field over here and we wait until it dries out. But the concentrated brine, in the useless inlet area is transferred into the useless loop area through a 20-kilometer long flume. And the useless loop area has 37 crystallizer ponds in various sizes and shapes, a saltwater washing plant and a stockpile area, and its own loading port as well. The company operates it's an absolutely massive operation. Yeah. It's an absolutely huge operation. And the company operates a residential village, which is the town of Useless Loop, within close proximity to the operation, which provides employees and their families with housing, recreational facilities, and schooling. I'll come back to this in a minute and explain a little bit more how this works. So if you can't really picture what this looks like, we've included a bunch of photos and as always, resources in the show notes, one of which is actually an ABC News program, a video about it, which gives you so much more detail than I'll go into here. And I would strongly recommend watching it, sorry. But if you can't do that, if you just go to the salt.com.au link that's in the show notes, that will show you pictures of this facility. But if you're driving and you want to know, I want you to imagine basically what like a giant rice paddy shaped field is. So it's pretty much a flat paddock with sort of a hump of soil around the whole exterior, so it is lower than the surrounding landscape. And they fill this with, generally it's a sort of a few inches deep at a time of water, of the salty brine, and then they leave it to evaporate in the sun. And once it gets to a certain point, the salt crystals start essentially growing from the ground up, and then they pump a bit more water in and a bit more water, and they just build the salt layer up and up and up and up and up. And over 12 months, they grow the salt crystals.
Wow, 12 months.
Yep. And each pond is harvested once a year. They use a lot of heavy machinery. So the sorts of equipment that you would see for like road maintenance, basically, they use graders and excavators. It's kind of unusual to see because they're harvesting. Essentially they're mining the salt, but they're also growing it. So it's a bit of a weird. It's sort of like a farm. It's more akin to farming than it is to mining, but.
Bloody hell, imagine the maintenance on the steel on those things that are just driving over salt all day.
Oh, yes. They must use a lot of oil to help keep that salt off. But once each pond is harvested, approximately once a year, it is then cut up, put onto a truck and driven to the port, which is right next door, where it is washed with a brine solution to make sure it's clean, because sometimes they'll get a bit of dirt and things like that in it, of course, and you'll always get a little bit of impurities just because it's open to the air. And then that 99.7% pure salt is then transported onto a ship for export. And the Shark Bay port facility at Useless Loop can run an export load rate of 22,000 metric tons per day, which is
of salt,
which is insane. Obviously, they don't run that much every single day, but overall, they still produce 1.3 million tons of salt per year, which is a hell of a lot of salt. There's literal mountains of salt sit at the port facility ready for export. And some of the photos of the size of these piles of salt is just absolutely insane. It's very, very cool. Of course, as this is sea salt, the resource is, in a human scale, is basically infinite and very much renewable. So whilst it's technically mining, it's more akin to farming than you sort of would traditionally think of mining as a resource. And this is important because the Shark Bay area is actually a national park, though the salt mine was here before the national park was established. And as a result, they have very strict environmental rules around how they can process the salt and very, very strict environmental regulations around the salty brine leaching into the environment and those sorts of things. So it's very, very heavily regulated and very, very much the government is on top of, because it is such a pristine environment that this sits in the middle of. But because it is kind of more akin to farming than mining in a traditional sense, it's allowed. And so far, there haven't really been any problems with it as well. What I think is really impressive is because Useless Loop is a company town, and that company is Mitsu, a Japanese company, traditionally, when you think of sort of like fly in, fly out workers, particularly in Western Australia, you're thinking of sort of the iron ore mines, the coal mines, those sorts of things. But of course, this isn't a traditional FIFO sort of working environment because they have built the town of Useless Loop. And what I think is more impressive is more than 50% of the employees and residents that live in the town of Useless Loop have lived there for more than 10 years. So they are very clearly quite happy with their working and living conditions, and they must enjoy living out there as well. And are probably treated quite well, I'd imagine. Otherwise, they probably would have left. FIFO traditionally is quite a difficult working environment, so I think having more than half your employees have been there for that long is exceptionally impressive, given the rest of sort of the FIFO mining industry. They have a medical center, a library, a community center, swimming pool, playgrounds, a small sort of convenience store type shop. They have their own school and even a pub. So they're not really missing out too much there. And they also appear to have quite a close-knit community as well. Lots of community events, lots of community barbecues and all of that kind of stuff. What impressed me the most, though, was actually the school. This serves students from kindergarten to grade 12 and generally only enrolls around about 30 students. As you can imagine, there aren't too many kids in this area because there's only about 200, well, less than 200 residents at any one time. But for the fact that the school is so small, it is significantly well resourced and has quite high standards from what I've seen. And what I thought was really interesting was Japanese is also taught as standard, which is pretty unique here in Australia. So the company very much wants their employees' kids to, be able to effectively communicate when I'm sure they grow up and maybe take over their parents' roles in the community. As I said, unfortunately, it is a closed town though, so you can't really go there without permission. That is unless, of course, you become an employee of Mitsu. So as nice as it might sound, you can't just drive up and join the community. And actually, they did say that if you want to become an employee when they do have openings, they interview the entire family to make sure not only are you fit to do the job.
Is that right?
Yeah, that you're fit for the community as well, which I think is really important.
Interesting.
In a place like that. It is a really small community, and you need to make sure that not only do you fit in the working role, that you also fit within the community as well, which I think I completely understand, why they'd want to do it that way. So I think wildly international history of Useless Loop, a company town that was named by a French explorer, mined by Aussies and then the Japanese to produce some of the highest quality salt in the world, highly prized. And so next time you go to Japan and you're watching the sumo wrestling, and they throw salt around the ring, there is a very good chance that is Australian shark-based salt that they're using.
Fantastic. Funny you should say that. I'm just in the middle of watching the sumo. I think it's at Nagoya. I've just been watching the highlights. Haven't been watching the whole thing. But that's funny that you should say that. Well, that's amazing. I wouldn't expected to have got all that interesting stuff out of that, and that interviewing the family. I mean, what look, I suppose you're a remote community. You can't afford to have friction and dissent. But I don't think I've ever heard. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Have you?
Yeah, I think in this, because it is a unique situation, and I do think this is one of those ones where it's like, because it's a remote community, it's a very small community, it's more than just a job. It's you live here, you work here, and so you need to fit in, and so does your family. They do like psychological evaluations and everything to make sure that not only can you live remote? Can you do the work? But also, are you going to fit in? Are you the sort of person that we want here and everything like that? And look, I understand that probably kind of skirts some discrimination laws and things like that. But at the end of the day, this is a private company. It's all company property and those sorts of things. So I do feel like this very much kind of crosses that line in my mind. To a point where it's like, no, like we've got to make sure that if you're out here, you're a long way from anywhere else. So,
mates of the podcast, you want to have a look on Google Maps or Apple Maps and see where it is. You haven't got a shop down the road. Well, sorry, you literally do within the town.
Within the town.
A company shop. But aside from that, without it's really, really not near much at all. There's a couple little other little communities around there, but you'd want to be happy. You'd want to be happy living there.
Oh, yes. And I should say as well, they do have their own little airstrip. So they can fly in and fly out if they do need to. There is a road. It's not completely cut off from the mainland. There is a road, a single road, I should say. But it's so remote. The closest town to it is the town of Denham, which is across the bay. But when I say that, I'm sort of talking like 30 Ks sort of thing from like the nearest town across the water.
But that's as the crow flies.
Yeah, as the crow flies. Without flying, a boat would be your quickest way in and out across to Denham, which I'm sure they probably do to get some resources and stuff like that, because Denham's it's not much bigger, but it is has like 1,000 people sort of thing that lives there, so there's a bit more, and it's very much sort of the touristy area of this region as well.
Denham is.
So yeah. So
right.
like if you're in this area, if you're going to Shark Bay, that's where most people go, is to the town of Denham. If you've heard of Dirk Hartog Island, which a lot of people have heard of, and for a lot of people it is a bit of a bucket list place to go as well. That is sort of north and the last bit west of Useless Loop. So the people that come to this area are normally hardcore full drivers and travelers that want to get that photograph on the most westerly point of Western Australia, which is sort of quote unquote just up the road from Useless Loop. But other than that, there really isn't anything out here. You are surrounded by a whole lot of nothing. So yeah, you best fit in otherwise. And look, if you want to go to this region, I would really highly recommend you to. It's 100% on my bucket list, somewhere that I'd love to go. And actually, I think part of me is a little bit scared to go here because I think I'll like it so much I won't want to leave. It very much ticks all my boxes. It's dry, it's sunny, it's surrounded by beautiful water, marine environments, tick, 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 tick. So maybe I'll have to go when I'm a little bit older so I can be here for my kids before I disappear into the WA beaches. But anyway, one day, who knows? Maybe I'll get to go to the town of Useless Loop, but very few people will. But if you want to get out to Western Australia, get out there, get to Shark Bay, have a look around, and maybe if you go to Denham, you'll see Useless Loop on the horizon, forever out of your reach.
Oh, that's great. I wonder if the local shop there sells salt.
Well, interestingly, I'm not sure that they do. Well, if they do, it probably isn't from there because almost all of it is exported to Japan and other parts of Asia. So I'm not even sure how much of it is actually consumed in Australia as well. I think a lot of it.
Well, that'd be interesting. But I meant, look, sure, if you're working there, they wouldn't care if you grabbed a handful and chucked it in your pocket.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure the within the town they've probably got plenty. Or maybe they're sick of it
for their chips.
Maybe they're sick of it and they're like, nah, everything's unsalted. We don't use it here. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be funny. It's all unsalted.
All right, let's move on. Workers are being paid less than their productivity gains. And we've been told that productivity growth is the primary driver of higher living standards. We've also been told that the gains from productivity growth are returned to people in three ways: in real higher working wages, lower prices, and more free time. But researchers for the Centre of Policy Development say that the typical worker's pay has not kept pace with productivity growth in Australia for the last 30 years. They say the gains from productivity growth have been increasingly captured by businesses. They say that the findings raise serious questions about Australia's wage setting and bargaining institutions' ownership and the future direction of technology. In recent years, the Productivity Commission found that there has been no significant decoupling between productivity and labour compensation, but the Australian Bureau of Statistics has found evidence that wages have fallen behind productivity. International research has also suggested that wage and productivity decoupling has occurred across many advanced economies in the recent decades, which I think most people have probably also found in just their everyday lives. Things do seem to be getting worse, and we're seeing it kind of occur in real time. I feel like COVID really kicked that into high gear. But anecdotally, I don't think that's too much of a surprise to most people. In recent years, the Productivity Commission has argued that the mining and agricultural industries have been largely responsible for driving what appears to be an aggregate wage decoupling across Australia's economy in the last 30 years. But if you remove those two industries from the data, that problem largely disappears. The Productivity Commission argued in 2023, quote, Since 1995, the wages of over 95% of Australia's working population have risen very closely in line with productivity, end quote. But the Centre, sorry, I've written CDP, which doesn't help you if you don't remember what that means. The Centre for Policy Development researchers challenged that finding. They've argued that the majority of industries in Australia have seen wages pooling from productivity growth over the last 30 years, and the gaps have been widest where productivity growth has actually been the strongest. They say that patterns remain when mining and agriculture are excluded from the data. And look, now, this is where I would love to hold up a graph and be like, look at this, let me show you. But alas, of course, this is an audio medium, so I cannot. Of course, we have included a number of articles and the report in the show notes, as well as data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, if you are interested in the raw numbers. But the basic fact is, across the 16 industrial sectors, only 4 saw a reduction in productivity, but every single one of them failed to increase their real median earnings to keep up with the productivity gains. Basically, you're doing more and being paid less for it. What is also concerning is the reduction in working hours. It's gone down from 38.5 to 36.5 since 2001. And of course, your knee-jerk reaction is, if falling hours reflected a conscious choice by Australians for more leisure, then we should find that households' hours falling, shifting to more part-time work by choice rather than necessity, and mothers' post-birth decline in working hours being a choice rather than a necessity. And the decline of working hours concentrated among high-income earners who can, of course, afford to purchase more leisure time. But that's not what the data showed at all. The biggest drops in hours working were happening amongst people with the lowest wages. So this doesn't appear to be very much of a choice, or certainly a story about choice. This is telling a story about part-time work, about gig work, and the casualization of entire industries. Think about Uber drivers, the gig economy, and the short-term contracting that we keep seeing across the country. The Centre for Policy Development research comes as the debate around Australia's lacklustre productivity performance has once again flared up. This week, Deloitte Access Economics said that for too long in Australia, strong population growth has been masking a weak underlying productivity performance and lifting aggregate growth while doing less to improve living standards. And the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, also warned that the decline in real wage growth in Australia over recent years was concerning. It said, quote, since the March quarter of 2021, before the surge in energy prices, real hourly wages in Australia have fallen approximately 5%, representing one of the steepest declines among the OECD countries. The sustained erosion of purchasing power points to persistent pressures on household incomes, even as the labour market has remained broadly solid, end quote. So, dark clouds hanging over Australia, which should be no surprise for any of us here, quite frankly. But knowing what the issue is kind of half the battle. So what do you think, Ardeet? Is this surprising to you, or is this more confirming what you sort of already think and feel in your everyday life?
Yeah, it's not surprising to me. I see this as an increasing social problem. I think it's been simmering for a while, and I think it's now coming to a bit of a head. Now, I don't know. We may well have another 15 years of it, but I do think for me, it's like a good enough rule of thumb that comes into play here. If I feel like I'm being paid good enough for my work, and I reckon my employer is getting a reasonable cut for their risk-taking and management, then I'm probably happy enough. And there's a certain amount of people can bear it if there's perceived to be an element of fairness and give and take. You might have a grumble, you might have a whinge, but you might think, oh, yeah, okay, well, there you go, I have to do this, and thank God I don't have to do those books. And, I'd like to get a bit more pay, but that's not too bad. So that's why I sort of say good enough is something that a lot of people can live with. But unfortunately, workers have been feeling the pinch for a while. That's also true for a number of businesses as well, which means we're needing to look upwards and not sideways at our neighbour. There's a lot of I suppose stirring of the pot to say, look, it's that greedy business there, and that slack employer there, which we tend to get from a lot of the government and bureaucrats, and also from the people who are using them for their advantage, and in some cases what appears to be downright greed. We also need to look at the impacts of government spending, increasing in inflation, which has a flow-on effect. So socially, I think it's a real issue. And you can have all these things that they were talking about with look, we do this measure here, we do that measure there, and that looks fine and that looks great. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you're told you've got it. If you don't feel like you've actually got it good, you're not feeling like you've got it good. Yep. And I think look, it can be easy to sort of think, I should be getting more for this, I should be getting more for that. But if it is something you sort of think, oh yeah, okay, that's sort of fair enough, you can live with it. But I think less and less people are sort of thinking, listen, I'm getting shafted here. I'm doing my stuff. What was that thing? You said there was, I don't know whether you said it was a productivity commission, but said the returns for productivity, I took a note of that, that the prices come down, your wages go up, and you get your increased free time. I mark all of them a fail.
Yes.
I think for most people, most of the time, all of those are a fail.
Yep.
And the people look at it and they think, well, I'm actually getting a little bit of a gutful of this. And I'm sick of being told that, next year, next election, next leader that comes in, this is going to get fixed. I mean, they look at it and they're thinking, this just reeks of bullshit. And I don't blame people for feeling that way at all. And I don't care what the boffins are telling them. And look, I mean, we seem to say one of the things that going through it that I saw was that unionisation seems to be a problem. Now, I've got different opinions and different things with in different industries and different situations with unionisation. Look, it's been I used to be a union member and union rep in the financial sector union many years ago, but now I'm seeing that you've got this top-heavy bureaucracy in the big unions, and it seems, an emphasis on seems to be more concerned about their jobs than those of the workers. So you've got the people who are looking towards somebody who's saying they can do something about it, and seeing some of the bargains that come out and seeing how some of them are feathering their nest. And I can understand a bit of despair, negativity, and thinking, well, bloody hell, the people who are meant to represent us, aren't doing their job either. It's I suppose you're talking about, well, who do you vote for? What do you create? So there's a whole complexity there. But at a basic level, I can understand the average worker looking up there and saying, well, we're just being taken advantage of. We're just being shafted, and wouldn't disagree with them at all. So That's how I see it, and I see it as I see it as a potentially dangerous social problem. I think and I don't know the answer. I wish I could say, look, click, here's the answer for it. Here's everything wonderful that people will accept. I suppose I remain optimistic that people can go up to we can go up to the brink as a society, and then get pulled back, or a solution worked out. But I have this as, sort of one of my social flags that I'm looking at, and I think it's a real problem. I try to be optimistic about a lot of things. I'm not massively optimistic about this this gap, this decoupling between the wages and productivity. Look, things change. We do, these changes take longer than what we expect. Unfortunately, we've seen this having its roots in the changes to the financial monetary systems springing out from the late 70s, coming through, which is why we're talking about this being why I'm talking about this being a longer term thing. My concern is it's coming to a head in the next 10 years. My hope is that there will be some development that can bring some faith in the system back into people who at the moment are frankly feeling abandoned.
Yeah.
So that's probably a little bit dark and pessimistic than what it normally is, but that's how I see it, DK. What about you?
No, I think I'm actually kind of surprised that was your take. I didn't think. Well, I never really know what you're gonna think, do I? So, but very much a similar sort of mindset. I think It's frustrating because obviously, I'm a capitalist, but there's got to be a balance, right? There's a social contract that I think has kind of broken, where you got to throw your people a bone at the end of the day. People aren't a renewable resource that you can just exploit and expect that there's not going to be any repercussions. And I do feel like we're getting to a point where the vast majority of people have had enough. They're seeing their quality of life decline. People of my generation, millennials, have a whinge. We've always been a generation of people that are willing to speak up, and I think we're at the point now where we've kind of lived through too many once in a lifetime financial meltdowns to kind of go, look, something's got to change here. We've got to find a balance that and I think what you said about the unions is quite interesting, because traditionally that's where you would turn to go, look, collectively we can bargain for better working conditions, stronger wages, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, they do seem to, a lot of unions, not all of them, but a lot of them do seem to have become quite political. They're asking sort of like for working conditions that probably aren't the priority for a lot of the workers, or they're not supporting their members in the way that they feel like they should, and so on and so forth. I haven't heard a lot of positivity about unions in their current form. Look, I'm sure there are some good ones out there, but I do feel like a lot of people are probably feel like they're being let down by them. And of course, the union talking about it is almost like a dirty word in certain circles as well, where it's oh no, the union's just gonna undermine you, and a lot of large companies we've seen in the past. And again, more recently, of course, don't want you to unionize because they don't want to pay you more and those sorts of things. So I think it's going to get better before it gets worse. But I do hope that the Australian government does listen to these organisations who are part of the government that are saying, hey, things aren't great here. When the Australian Bureau of Statistics is pointing at the Productivity Commission, who's going, no, things are fine. And they go, well, actually, the data doesn't say that. And remembering the data at this point is a fair bit out of date. That I feel like that's getting to a pretty bad point. Like, something's got to change here, and you can't just these big companies can't just continue to buy back shares and massive bonuses for shareholders. And I say that as a shareholder of a lot of these companies, right? Like, there's got to be a balance, otherwise the whole system gets out of whack, and that's where you have things like revolutions and so on and so forth. And obviously that's at the extreme end. I'm not saying that Australia's on the cusp of some sort of revolution or anything like that. But I do think that the warning signs are here now. We have a choice whether we pay attention to them or we just ignore them. And if we do ignore them, that is a very dangerous road and can be wildly unpredictable about how it's going to result. I don't know that leaning on things like new technologies is necessarily the right direction out of here. I think it can help assist people. I think one of two things is the honest solution to this. This, as you pointed out, there's three gains from productivity growth, and that's either more wages, lower prices, or more free time. And I think the vast majority of Aussies, if you said to them, pick one of those three that you can have, and they'll be happy with one of the three. I think most, you throw them a bone, right? Give them either a wage increase, give them access to lower prices.
Exactly.
Or give them more free time. Or ideally, a bit of all three, which has been the case in the past. This isn't a crazy idea of people that are making businesses more money should be either compensated more for it, should be able to their wages should be able to buy them more, or they should have more free time. And we keep hearing, I swear, for decades now about, let's do a 4-day work week and stuff like that. And then it just never happens. And of course, some businesses do stuff like that. And I understand it would be hard to kind of change, like, when do you give the people that extra day off? Do you just close the office for a day? But then that's awkward because customers may need something, blah, 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 blah. So I understand there's like logistical issues around that, but make it work. Like, figure it out. Don't just do nothing.
Yeah.
Because
exactly, figure it out, work out a way. We've worked out other things before. Just, is it staggered? Do you have arrangements with other businesses? Do you have different hours? Do you have? I'm meant to think, it's too hard. Is rubbish.
Yeah. And we're better than that, quite frankly. Like, that is a rubbish excuse, and we can. We've come up with more difficult solutions to problems than how do we give people a 4-day work week? I think a lot of Aussies would be really happy with a 4-day work week, and even if you stagger that throughout the week, and it's like half the office gets Monday off, half the office gets Fridays off, and certain workplaces do that, or you get a 4-day work week once a month or something like that, and that makes people a lot happier. They're like, okay, and we've also seen their productivity increases. Would you look at that? When people are happier, they actually do more in their workplace. Shock, horror. Who would have guessed? So yeah, I do think the social contract around productivity, and I don't think it's unique to Australia. I think it's kind of got out of kilter. I don't think the social contract's broken, but I do think that it's heading in the wrong direction, and we kind of need to wind this back. And I say this as a shareholder, as someone that is independently wealthy, as someone that does, have people working for me, things like that. Like, I'm the sort of person that you would think would be on the other side of this, but greed is going to ruin, absolutely destroy this country if we don't get this right. And the reality is the system will just be torn down and something else will come in its place. So it's very, very key that we do get this right. Otherwise, things are going to get really, really bad for everyone. You're not going to be protected. Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of them sitting in their mega yachts, they will not be protected. Your wealth will not save you from if this gets that bad. Like, we've seen this time and time again through history.
Oh, does it?
Like, yeah, I don't...
Spot on.
It's not going to be different this time, guys. We need to find that balance, and it's way out of whack. And it's, again, this isn't unique to Australia, and I think probably a lot of our listeners all around the world can kind of empathize with their own country's issues are probably stemming back to a lot of the stuff as well. And I'm glad a lot of people are talking about it. It's not unique to us talking about this now. We're not the first ones to talk about this. And I'm really glad that we are, because I do strongly think that a big part of fixing a problem is just figuring out what that problem is to start with. And we know, and we need to do something about it. What that looks like, I think, is going to be very, very different depending on which government steps get taken and things like that. And also if we have a change in government at the next election, or if we don't have a change in government at the next election, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot. This is a huge, complicated issue that's not going to be solved quickly. It's going to take years, potentially a decade to sort out.
Yeah.
But we need to start, like, actually focusing on this sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And quite frankly, I don't want that to happen. And I'm sure most people don't. So let's figure it out. And let's move on, because now it is time for This Week in Australian History.
This week in Australian history, we're covering 10th to 16th of July. July 10th in 1812, the report of a select committee on transportation, which the first study of transportation generally supported Lachlan Macquarie's Liberal policies and endorsed more humane treatment of convicts under Governor Macquarie.
Sorry, I laugh, but it feels very, from what we were just talking about. It's like, oh, well, maybe if you don't treat even these prisoners, right? But maybe don't treat them like cattle, and maybe you'll get a better outcome at the other end of it. Oh, who would have guessed?
Yep, exactly. 1911, King George V grants the title of Royal Australian Navy to Australians' naval forces, and that was recognising the growing independence and capability of the Aussie naval forces. July 11th, 1979, an American space station, Skylab, crashes in Western Australia, scattering debris across the outback and leading to humorous fines for NASA, and gave them a global media attention. And we did cover that in a Two Ticks Town Talk on Balladonia, with the famous song Balladonia Nights, which is disturbingly catchy ear glue for me for some reason. It's such a daggy song and clip, but I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode.
Oh, you're not going to sing it for us? Come on.
Oh, I gave it a little bit there, but and that link will have a link to the YouTube one. Hopefully, it's still up. But yeah, so Balladonia was. They'll give a few more details on the Skylab crash in WA and what the fines for NASA. July 12th, dud date. I keep looking up these things and thinking, well, let's see if we've got something else there. But no, still a dud. Maybe next year. July 13th, 1945. Because it's past. You've had your dash. July 13th. 1945, Ben Chifley becomes the 16th Prime Minister of Australia, and he oversaw a whole lot of post-World War II reconstruction and key infrastructure, in particular the Snowy Mountain Scheme, still a critical piece of infrastructure for Australia. 1997, a crowd of over 100,000 people watched the Royal Canberra Hospital implosion, and that was, unfortunately, there was a little 12-year-old girl, Katie Bender, was killed instantly when debris from the site travelled across Lake Burley Griffin. It was just one of those Freak accidents, look, they did lead inquiries into demolition safety. Unfortunately, it was just one of those things that sometimes the universe just picks you out and you've got no choice in the matter. July 14th, 1792, the Home Secretary authorises Governor Phillip to make land grants to civil and military officers, rewarding them for service in the early colony. 1995, the Australian Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flags are proclaimed as official flags of Australia. So it's affirming Indigenous cultural identity and going towards reconciliation to efforts. 1851, Charles La Trobe was appointed as First Lieutenant. I'll ask you, First Lieutenant or Lieutenant Governor of Victoria, and he governed during the Gold Rush era. So obviously massive growth there. Now, if he's, I know you said before that Navy-wise in Australia, it's lieutenant.
Yep.
If they're on the ground doing something like a governor, are they lieutenant still or lieutenant?
Well, he would have been appointed by, he would have been in the British Army, so he probably would have gone by lieutenant rather than lieutenant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Particularly back then, I would imagine as well. Yeah.
Okay. Continuing July 15th, 1912, the first branch of the Commonwealth Bank opens. 1940, the Volunteer Defence Force, composed mainly of World War I veterans, was formed for home defence by the Returned Services League, preparing for potential invasion during World War II. 1977, anti-drugs campaigner Donald Mackay disappeared near Griffith, presumed murder. Never found him. He did a whole lot of work on trying to expose organised crime and the drug trade in that area and in Australia. July 16th, in 1800, Reverends Richard Johnson and Samuel Marsden opened a church school at Ryde. So that sort of laid the groundwork for formal schooling in the colony. And then finally, on July 16th, 1914, Maurice Guillot leaves Melbourne to fly to Sydney in a Blériot monoplane in the first delivery of airmail. And he arrived in Sydney a couple of days later on 18th July after 9.5 hours of flying time, and his pioneering flight demonstrated aviation's potential and obviously ultimately recognised as something that could happen for airmail services. Now, my guess is Maurice would have celebrated with a delicious glass of wine, given his French heritage, but I'm also sure he would have said, if anyone is discussing this in the future, I give them my blessing to use a beer opening sound effect. Sante, Sante. All right, emus in this 4X bottle top quiz, which that sound brings us to, which for some reason reminded me of a wine bottle. So today we're going to actually do, or this week we're going to do emus. What is we're going to go from easy through medium to hard and to you'd fluke it or amaze me bonus question.
Okay.
So
no
which
pressure.
look, we know how it goes. If you don't get the hard bonus questions, it's no big deal because they're usually sort of a bit ridiculous. What is the approximate top running speed of an emu? And you get a multiple choice on this one,
Ooh.
which we don't normally do, but yeah. So is it 20 kilometres an hour, 35, 48 to 50, or over 70 kilometres per hour?
Oh, I don't think it's that high. I know they're bloody quick though, so it could be that high. I don't. This is a good question. I'm trying to think how fast a cheetah is. Cheetah's the fastest land animal. I don't know how fast they are though. Now that I think about it,
Yeah, well, that doesn't help you, does it?
No, that's not helping me at all. What was the one below 70? It was what is it?
48 to 50.
I'm gonna guess. That feels. I wanted to say like they're in the 60s, but I'm trying to think if a cheetah's more than 100, but I don't know. I'm just guessing. So I'll go with the 45 to 50 kilometers an hour. It's still pretty quick.
Yep, 48 to 50 kilometres an hour, about 30 miles per hour.
Wow.
Yeah, they can sprint at that with long strides when they get their speed up. So good guess, well done, ding, ding, ding. Now, obviously, aside from insemination, what role do male emus play in reproduction?
What do you mean? Like, I'm sure they do like a dance.
Sorry. Actually, it could have been phrased a bit better. In terms of once the female lays the eggs.
Right.
So because you've got obviously the initial mating that produces the eggs. The eggs have to incubate, and then the chicks come out. So that bit up until the chicks come out is still part of the reproduction.
Yes, right. So are they good dads or not? My initial reaction would be that they probably don't do much, but the fact that you're asking this question suggests that maybe there's some more to it. I wonder if they protect the nest while the mother, like, are they like seahorses where they do everything and the mother's the one that leaves? I'm not sure.
They're in the desert. They don't swim.
No, but yeah,
a little scuba gear on, thinking we really should lay these eggs on land.
No, I mean like seahorses, very famously, very good dads. They look after their babies well, and actually the penguins do too. So I wonder if they're a bit like the penguins, where they do a lot of the sort of maternal care, but I guess in this case it's paternal. So I'll say that they're like penguins. They look after the eggs until they hatch.
Well, you got that correctly right. There's typically around about 15 to 25 eggs in a clutch or a hatch, and they sit on them and protect them for about 56 to 60 days, about 8 weeks. They lose up to about 1/3 of their body weight during that period, surviving mainly on stored fat and whatever dew they can lick off the nest and the ground from around them, hardly ever leaving the nest. So, yeah, they're just right onto it. And females may mate with multiple males and lay multiple clutches as well.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, gets on there, looks after that. It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
Seems to work, obviously. There's plenty of emus, but...
Yes, there is, yeah.
Yeah.
Enough to bloody go to war for.
Exactly. Where there isn't, as we know from our Two Ticks Town talk on the town of Stanley, part 1, is we know that the emu became extinct in Tasmania in the mid to late 1800s. What are the other two well-known islands that were also once home to emus?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Is this a bonus question? No.
No, the bonus question. If you don't know it, you've got no chance.
Yeah, right.
So, no one to get you down about that, but yeah, no, you're either going to know that one or not. But I thought it was a little interesting factoid. But no, this is the third question, not the bonus one. So, what are the other two well-known islands that were also home to emus.
I'm going to guess probably Kangaroo Island off the coast of South Australia, just because it's quite a large island, like certainly big enough that I think it could host a population of emus. But again, this is a total guess.
1 out of 2. God, right into it.
Yeah, well, it's just naturally a very big island that, pretty close. I think that it was at one point, attached to the mainland. So that makes sense to me. The other one, I have absolutely no freaking idea. Maybe the Tiwi Islands off the coast of Darwin. I'll go with that because that's another big island. But I'm trying to think, like, it's got to be a big island to host a population of. Maybe Fraser Island is possibly the other one.
No, it's not. But you're thinking right. Go a bit further south.
Oh, see, I don't know if emus are how far north they go. What's that big island off the coast of Tassie?
Yeah, you're getting close.
Flinders Island? Is that what it's called?
No.
Or King Island?
That's it.
King Island. Yeah.
King Island. Yeah. Yeah. So when the waters rose, however many years ago it was, I can't remember, 15,000 years ago or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Cut things off. Yeah, they were on there. And, of course, when the Europeans arrived, same fate as what happened with the Tassie emus. So King Island and Kangaroo Island did have those sort of smaller versions of the mainland emu. So, bonus question. When were mainland emus introduced, or you could say reintroduced, but introduced to Tasmania, and how long did they last?
Oh wow! Yeah, I really have no idea.
Yeah,
So it has to be after the very late 1800s at the earliest, because they were hunted to extinction before that. So it has to be.
I'll give you heaps of hits. Definitely way later.
I'm going to guess this feels like something they would do like post-war, trying to, be a bit more environmentally friendly. I feel like people haven't really cared about the environment too much in the past. It was very much thought that, didn't matter what we did. It was kind of like, we can do whatever we want, and the earth can take it. Our mindset's changed for the better, I think. So I'm going to say 1980s. How long did they last? 3 years.
Oh, okay, yeah, look, mate. They were introduced to a Tasmanian island called Mareeba Island, so not onto the main island of Tassie. It wasn't a deliberate effort, but someone took them over there in 1960. Yeah, and they started to have a little bit of a breed up. Unfortunately, they became quite aggressive. They weren't afraid of everything. They'd just come up and peck food out of people's hands and get quite territorial. So by 1980, the population was up to about 30 emus, and they basically became a pest to visitors. And in 1994, the last one was shot. So,
fair. Put it out of its misery. I mean, you could have put it in a zoo or something.
No, deliberately shot.
Yeah. Deliberately.
Yeah, because they said they'd become such a pest to the visitors. They shouldn't have been here. It wasn't our plan. This has got wildly out of control.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to cull them.
We're fixing the problem that we've created, unfortunately. Yeah. It's time to die. Well, to be fair, if you behaved, then we wouldn't have to do this. It's really their fault.
Yeah, that's right. It's really their fault.
Yep. Shouldn't have been an emu.
Well done.
Oh, that is really interesting. There you go. So on that, thank you so much for joining us for another Australia Talks. If you have any feedback for suggestions for topics, please get in touch with us on our email at australiatalks@proton.me. We'd just be grateful if you could subscribe and give us an honest review, as this helps us out immensely. But the best thing you can do to support the show is share it with a friend that you think might enjoy it. Otherwise, join us next week for another episode of Australia Talks. As always, thanks for listening, and don't forget to tell your mum I love her.
Thank you, DK.